She smiles at you from across the room. Her laugh is magnetic. Her words feel like honey. But what if I told you that the most dangerous women in your life aren't the ones who scream or throw plates? What if the real threat comes wrapped in charm, vulnerability, and even love itself? Carl Jung spent his life studying the hidden forces that control us, the unconscious patterns, the invisible chains. And he discovered something terrifying about human relationships. The most destructive people are often the ones we're drawn to most. They're not obviously toxic. They don't wave red flags. Instead, they slip into your psyche like smoke through cracks in a window. And before you know it, you're not living your own life anymore. You're living theirs. You see, Jung understood something most people miss. We don't just interact with each other. We invade each other's unconscious minds. We project our shadows. We merge our traumas. We become psychological prisoners without even realizing it. Think about it. How many times have you felt drained after talking to someone? How many times have you been blamed for emotions you didn't cause? How many times have you tried to save someone who only pulled you deeper into their darkness? This isn't about being a victim. This isn't about pointing fingers. This is about understanding the invisible games being played with your mind. Every single day. Jung called it projection, an unconscious mechanism where people throw their inner conflicts onto you. And suddenly, you're not a person anymore. You're a screen, a mirror, a symbol of their unhealed wounds. The scariest part? Often, you don't even know it's happening. You think you're being helpful, empathetic, mature. Meanwhile, you're drowning in someone else's psychological swamp. And here's what Jung discovered that will change how you see every relationship in your life. The greatest dangers don't come from conscious manipulation. They come from unconscious forces that even the other person doesn't understand. These are women who live alienated from their own psyche, dominated by masks, traumas, and repressed desires. They're not evil. They're dangerous, and this danger is silent. It doesn't knock on your front door. It seeps in slowly, through small comments, veiled accusations, loaded silences, until you start to doubt your own reality. Are you ready to see the truth? Are you ready to understand the psychological patterns that might be controlling your life right now? Because after you hear this, you'll never look at relationships the same way again. You'll never be the same person who walked into this moment. Let's dive into the 7 types of dangerous women Jung would warn you about. And maybe, just maybe, we'll discover which of these patterns might be hiding inside you too. Number 1. The unconscious manipulator. Picture this. You're with a woman who seems fragile, sensitive, deeply emotional. She has this way of making you feel like her protector, her savior. But something strange happens. Every conversation leaves you feeling guilty. Every interaction ends with you questioning yourself. Every day with her feels like walking through an emotional minefield. This is the unconscious manipulator, and she's more dangerous than any woman who screams or fights, because she operates in the shadows of consciousness. Jung said, "What we do not confront in ourselves, we will encounter as fate." And this woman, she's living that truth every single day. But instead of confronting her own darkness, she projects it onto you. She doesn't see you as a person. She sees you as a canvas for her internal conflicts, a screen where she can project all the pain she refuses to acknowledge in herself. When she feels rejected, you become the abandoner. When she feels angry, you become the one who triggered it. When she feels worthless, you become the one making her feel small. And here's the trap. She's not doing this consciously. She genuinely believes her emotions are your fault. She's convinced that her pain is caused by your actions. This makes her manipulation feel authentic, sincere, even loving. you start to question everything. Did I really say that wrong? Am I being too harsh? Maybe I am the problem. And slowly, you lose touch with your own emotional reality. Jung warned us about this pattern. When projection goes unrecognized, it becomes a prison, a psychological cage where you stop being seen for who you are. Instead, you become a symbol of what's hidden in her unconscious mind. The unconscious manipulator often positions herself as the eternal victim. Everything that happens is someone else's fault, never hers. Her anger is because you provoked it. Her sadness is because you disappointed her. Her insecurity is because you made her feel inferior. This distortion is so subtle, so emotionally charged, that you begin to absorb her narrative. You start believing that you're responsible for emotions you never caused, for reactions that have nothing to do with you. But here's what Jung discovered. These women are often charming. They have charisma, emotional intensity, an aura that makes you think you can heal them, save them, understand them better than anyone else. This creates a psychological trap. You sacrifice your mental health trying to rescue someone who refuses to look inward. And the more you try, the deeper you sink into her unconscious web. The only way to protect yourself? Develop awareness. Recognize the patterns. Ask yourself constantly, is what I'm feeling mine, or has it been induced? Because the unconscious manipulator doesn't invade your life violently. She enters through the gap of your empathy, and once inside, she can rewrite your entire emotional reality. Number 2. The perfect persona. She's flawless, always put together, never a hair out of place. Her social media looks like a magazine. Her conversations are polished. Her reactions are always appropriate. But something feels wrong. Something feels empty. You're looking at the perfect persona. A woman who has become so identified with her social mask that she's forgotten who she really is underneath. And Jung considered this one of the most dangerous psychological patterns of all. In his work, Jung explained that the persona is the face we show the world. It's not necessarily false. We all need social masks to function in society, to be professionals, friends, daughters, partners. The danger begins when someone believes they are only that mask, when the persona sticks to the face so tightly that everything authentic gets locked away in the basement of the psyche. The perfect persona woman is a master of functional superficiality. She says what others want to hear. She behaves exactly right. She avoids conflicts at all costs. But behind this controlled exterior is a soul in ruins, because the more she maintains the image, the more she suffocates her true self. And this repression always demands a price, from her and from everyone around her. Living with this type of woman is profoundly unsettling. You feel like something's missing, but you can't name what. There's no spontaneity, no depth, no real truth in your interactions. Everything feels rehearsed. Worse, she projects this demand for perfection onto you. She expects you to perform too, to fit into her carefully constructed reality, to collaborate with her theater. If you express something outside her script, an intense emotion, a doubt, a moment of vulnerability, she retreats, becomes uncomfortable, shuts down, because anything that reminds her of what she's repressed becomes unbearable. Jung warned that this identification with the persona is one of the greatest threats to authentic living. When someone becomes hypnotized by the role they play, everything genuine dies. Suffocated behind a veneer of acceptability, living with her can make you doubt your own spontaneity. You start policing yourself, measuring your words, hiding parts of yourself that don't fit her ideal narrative. Gradually, you begin wearing a mask too, and you don't even notice it happening. This coexistence isn't just artificial, it's contagious. Her disconnection from authenticity spreads like a virus through the relationship, until both of you are living as strangers to yourselves. But there's something even more dangerous than living behind a mask. And that's what happens when someone represses their dark side for so long that it explodes with devastating force. Number 3. The repressed shadow. She seems like an angel, always controlled, always appropriate, never angry, never jealous, never anything that might disturb her image of moral perfection. But Jung knew better. He understood that when someone tries to be light all the time, darkness accumulates in the unconscious, growing, festering, until it erupts with terrifying power. This is the woman with the repressed shadow. Everything she considers ugly, wrong, or unacceptable gets pushed down into the basement of her soul. Not transformed, not integrated, just hidden. Jung dedicated much of his work to understanding the shadow. He said, "The shadow is everything the individual refuses to recognize in themselves, yet insists on manifesting somehow." We're not talking about external evil. The shadow isn't the darkness of the world. It's internal. It's the hatred she won't admit to feeling, the envy she rationalizes away, the sexuality she represses, the ambition she disguises as humility. Everything she rejects in herself doesn't disappear. It transforms into shadow. And as Jung taught, what we don't make conscious directs our lives. We call it destiny. The repressed shadow woman doesn't seem dangerous at first. Often she's admired, disciplined, kind, helpful. But there's something strange about her reactions. She doesn't tolerate weakness in others. She's bothered by spontaneity. She reacts poorly to intense emotions. She's always tense but never explodes. Until she does. And when that happens, it's devastating. This woman lives in constant emotional vigilance. She doesn't allow herself to feel, so she condemns those who do. She doesn't allow herself to fail, so she attacks those who do. She becomes moralistic, demanding, controlling. But all of this is just an attempt to keep her unconscious shadow locked away. Jung was clear. The stronger the persona, the more repressed the shadow. And the more repressed the shadow, the more brutal its eventual manifestation. You can identify this pattern in women who have disproportionate reactions, who explode over small things, who hold grudges for years, who sabotage relationships through passive-aggressive behavior. They're the ones no one understands. Why is she so bitter, so resentful, so critical? The answer lies in the shadow. Unintegrated, unrecognized, unaccepted. And here's what Jung discovered that changes everything. The shadow isn't just made of negative qualities. It also contains denied potential, repressed creativity, hidden strength. But when the shadow is ignored, all of this turns to poison. Living with the repressed shadow woman is like living next to an emotional time bomb. You never know what will trigger the explosion. But when it comes, the devastation is complete. And somehow, you always end up blamed for setting it off. This repression doesn't come from nowhere. It's often fed by rigid moral ideals that turn guilt into a weapon of control, which brings us to our next dangerous type. Number 4. The moral controller. Not every executioner carries a sword. Some use crosses, rules, dogmas, ready-made phrases about what's right and wrong. These are the women who claim to be driven by ethics and righteousness. But deep down, they're imprisoning themselves and others in a cage made of guilt and shame. Jung understood this archetype well. When morality becomes a facade, it transforms into one of the most insidious forms of psychological repression. The moral controller doesn't integrate her shadow. Instead, she projects it onto your behavior and condemns you for what she can't accept in herself. You've met women like this. They point fingers constantly, but never look inward. They position themselves as the standard for behavior, not because they truly are, but because they desperately need to maintain an image of moral superiority. According to Jung, the greater the repression, the more intense the need to project the shadow. That's exactly what the moral controller does. She transforms others into sinners, deviants, immoral beings to avoid facing her own desires, impulses, and contradictions. But here's what makes her so dangerous. Unlike other manipulators, she genuinely believes she's doing good. She thinks she's correcting, saving, educating you. And this makes her influence even more toxic because it's wrapped in authority and false spirituality. Her criticism comes with phrases like, "It's for your own good. You'll thank me later. Someone needs to tell you the truth." But this truth isn't neutral. It's loaded with projection. Jung extensively discussed figures like Christ and the Antichrist as archetypes of wholeness and dissociation. The moral controller believes she's embodying the light, but she completely ignores her own darkness. She projects evil onto others to maintain the illusion of purity within herself. This makes her blind, dangerous, unable to see the nuances of the human soul. If you live with someone like this, you start to feel constantly guilty, as if you're always wrong, even when you're just being human. You feel watched, judged, diminished. The most perverse part? You often internalize her judgment. You begin to repress parts of yourself that are natural, human, spontaneous. You mold yourself to an ideal that isn't yours. Her morality becomes your prison. Jung saw this pattern as a real threat to authentic growth. Where there's excessive moralism, there's an absence of self-knowledge. The extreme moralist doesn't want truth. She wants control. When she can't control the external world, she begins controlling the internal world of those around her. Your thoughts, your feelings, your natural impulses. Everything becomes subject to her moral scrutiny. But the moral controller isn't the only one guided by unconscious forces. There's another type that's even more volatile and unpredictable. Number 5. The complexed woman. Imagine being with someone who embraces you today and destroys you tomorrow, who's loving in the morning and cruel by evening, who punishes you for crimes you didn't commit against people you've never met. Welcome to the world of the complexed woman. Someone completely dominated by unconscious fragments that hijack her present moment and make her relive the past. For Jung, complexes are autonomous emotional nuclei that live in the unconscious. They're like fragmented personalities within us, created by traumas, psychic wounds, and unresolved experiences. These complexes can take control of consciousness at any moment. A simple comment connects unconsciously to an old abandonment. A harmless gesture triggers memories of rejection or humiliation. And everyone nearby pays the price. The complexed woman doesn't realize she's being controlled by these internal forces. When she reacts with fury, extreme sadness, or exaggerated resentment, she believes she's being rational. But she's not responding to you. She's responding to ghosts. This doesn't happen consistently. It occurs in emotional explosions, interspersed with moments of lucidity, affection, or regret. And this inconsistency makes the relationship even more confusing and addictive. You start to think, she's not always like this. Sometimes she's wonderful. And that's exactly what keeps you trapped. Because there are moments of genuine connection, real affection. But these moments are followed by unpredictable emotional storms. In an attempt to restore harmony, you adapt, you shrink, you start avoiding certain topics, measuring your words, walking on eggshells, all to avoid waking the emotional monsters that sleep within her. But here's the brutal truth Jung would want you to understand. Those monsters aren't awakened by you. They're always there, latent, hungry, waiting for any trigger to emerge. And when they do, they consume everything around them. Unrecognized complexes colonize the psyche. They speak for you, feel for you, act for you. In the case of the complexed woman, this takeover happens frequently. She might be dominated by a complex of inferiority, or martyrdom, or abandonment, or persecution, each with its own narratives, emotions, and demands. The more you try to maintain peace, the more you feed the illusion that it's possible to control the uncontrollable. Being close to someone like this means living in constant alert. There's never emotional stability. The present is always contaminated by the past. And sooner or later, you begin absorbing these emotional ghosts. You start doubting yourself, your memory, your feelings. Without realizing it, you're being colonized by her unconscious. But there's one more type that Jung would consider the most insidious of all. She doesn't shout, doesn't explode, doesn't accuse, but she consumes your energy until you have nothing left. Number 6. The psychic vampire. She doesn't want your presence. She wants your energy, your time, your attention, your empathy, and she'll drain it all until you're empty, exhausted, a shell of who you used to be. This is the psychic vampire, the most silent and insidious form of emotional draining that Jung ever warned about. In Jungian terms, she represents the unresolved symbiotic relationship, the pathological bond that prevents psychic growth and dissolves the boundaries of the self. Jung showed us that one of the greatest threats to wholeness is symbiotic relationships, where two people don't recognize themselves as separate individuals, but as psychological extensions of one another. The psychic vampire lives exactly in this type of connection. She needs your constant attention, your daily comfort, your availability around the clock. But behind the neediness is a void that isn't yours, and that you'll never be able to fill. It starts innocently. You offer support, then you give time, then you tolerate emotional abuse in the name of understanding, until you realize all your energy is being drained, and you no longer know where she ends and you begin. The exhaustion is profound. It's not just physical, it's existential. It feels as if your soul is being devoured drop by drop. Day after day, Jung spoke of people who, unable to sustain themselves psychically, attach to others like emotional parasites. And as harsh as it sounds, this is the truth. The psychic vampire doesn't want to grow. She wants to be carried. But the danger isn't just exhaustion. It's the dissolution of your identity. You start feeling guilty for wanting space, selfish for needing silence, cold for wanting distance. Because the psychic vampire is a master at reversing roles. From victim, she becomes accuser. From needy, she becomes manipulator. And before you realize it, you're living to avoid crises, to maintain peace, to sustain a bond that's killing you inside. She feeds on drama, on crisis, on your endless attempts to fix what can't be fixed. Every solution you offer becomes a new problem. Every boundary you set becomes evidence of your coldness. Every moment of self-care becomes an abandonment. You find yourself canceling plans, ignoring other relationships, sacrificing your dreams, all to keep her emotional world stable. But it's never stable. Because stability would mean she'd have to face herself. And that's exactly what she's avoiding. The psychic vampire uses your empathy against you. Your kindness becomes her weapon. Your love becomes her prison. And slowly, you forget what it feels like to live for yourself. Number 7. The idealized mother. This might be the most dangerous one of all. Because she doesn't seem dangerous. She seems perfect, nurturing, self-sacrificing, always putting others first. But Jung understood that the idealized mother archetype, when lived unconsciously, becomes a psychological trap for everyone around her. She's the woman who defines herself entirely through taking care of others, who finds her identity in being needed, who creates emotional dependence and calls it love. On the surface, she appears to be everything society tells us a woman should be: caring, supportive, always available. But beneath this nurturing exterior lies a complex web of control and manipulation. The idealized mother creates a reality where you can never fully grow up, where you're always somehow inadequate without her guidance, where your independence is treated as rejection. She gives and gives and gives. But every gift comes with invisible strings. Every act of care creates a debt. Every moment of nurturing builds a case for why you should never leave her emotional orbit. Jung called this the devouring mother archetype. She doesn't devour through cruelty, but through excessive care. She doesn't control through anger, but through guilt about her sacrifices. "Look how much I've done for you," she says. "Look how much I've given up." And suddenly, your natural desire for autonomy becomes ingratitude. Your need for space becomes abandonment. She positions herself as indispensable, as the only one who truly understands you, as the one person who will never leave you. But this promise comes at a cost. You must never truly leave her either. Living with this type of woman creates a profound psychological confusion. You feel guilty for wanting independence, selfish for having your own dreams, cold for not needing her as much as she needs to be needed. She's not conscious of what she's doing. In her mind, she's loving you, protecting you, saving you from a harsh world. But what she's actually doing is preventing your psychological birth into full adulthood. The idealized mother lives vicariously through others. Your achievements become hers. Your failures become her failures. Your relationships become threats to her centrality in your life. She creates what Jung called an unconscious identity merger. You stop knowing where her emotions end and yours begin. Her fears become your fears. Her needs become your obligations. And here's the most insidious part. She does all of this while appearing to be the most loving person in your life. Society reinforces her behavior, praises her devotion, celebrates her sacrifice. But Jung understood that true love promotes growth, not dependence. Real care encourages autonomy, not symbiosis. Authentic nurturing creates strength, not eternal need. The idealized mother may never raise her voice, never throw a tantrum, never seem dangerous at all. But she can prevent you from ever becoming who you're meant to be. And that might be the most dangerous thing of all. Now, here's what Jung would want you to understand above everything else. These patterns aren't about blame. They're about awareness. They're about recognizing the invisible forces that shape our relationships and our lives. The truth is, we've all been some of these types at different points in our lives. We've all projected our shadows. We've all worn masks. We've all manipulated through unconscious patterns. The difference lies in who has the courage to look inward, who chooses to make the unconscious conscious, who decides to break free from the patterns that bind us all. Jung offered us a path, a way out of the psychological prison we create for ourselves and others. He called it individuation, the journey toward wholeness, the process of becoming who we truly are beneath all the masks, projections, and unconscious patterns. This journey starts with a simple but revolutionary act: taking responsibility for your own unconscious, recognizing your own shadow, acknowledging your own capacity for projection, manipulation, and psychological danger. Because the moment you stop seeing these patterns as something other people do, you begin to reclaim your power. You stop being a victim of unconscious forces. You start becoming conscious of them. And consciousness, Jung taught us, is the only real freedom we have. So ask yourself these questions. Which of these patterns have you encountered? Which ones have controlled your relationships? Which ones, if you're brutally honest, might be living within you right now? Your answers could be the beginning of the most important journey you'll ever take. The journey towards psychological freedom. The journey toward authentic love. The journey toward becoming fully, consciously, dangerously alive. Because in the end, the most dangerous person in your life might not be someone else at all. It might be the unconscious parts of yourself that you've never had the courage to face. But once you face them, once you make them conscious, once you integrate them into your wholeness, that's when you become truly free. That's when you stop being dangerous to others. And that's when you stop allowing others to be dangerous to you. The choice is yours. The power has always been yours. The question is, what will you do with it?